Hey everyone, and welcome to The Scene. I'm your host, Jeremy Houtsma. My guest today is Jimmy Stadt, the lead vocalist for the band Polar Bear Club. Polar Bear Club has a really special place in my heart. Their music was the soundtrack to me getting my master's degree from 2009 to 2012. They also put on one of the most amazing performances that I've seen. Jimmy and I get into the topic of Polar Bear Club, from its inception to its demise, its constant band member changes, and what that process was like. With that said, welcome to The Scene. Well, first of all, congratulations. You have a new kid.
Thank you.
Welcome to the madness.
You have one or two?
Two.
Nice.
So I have a 4-year-old and one that just turned one. In
Don't know how you
January
do it.
5th.
Don't know how you do it.
So,
yeah.
Well, partially my wife would be one, but the other, I think, is I don't know either. So,
Yeah.
You adapt in ways that you never thought you could.
Sure. And you like my wife and I were talking about this today. Is like this week seems easier than last week, and then we were kind of like analyzing why that might be, and we're like, there's not a lot terribly different. We just kind of broke through those walls, and like we survived that scenario, and now when we come back around to it, we have like just grown a little bit. We're growing too,
Yeah. A lot.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it depends if your kid can sleep okay.
So we have been really, really lucky in that regard. And any any parent listening, and maybe even yourself, will probably want to punch me in the face. But we have, with our son, our first, have been very lucky on the sleep front. He's fussy during the day. We've paid for it during the days and it's getting better, but he's been
naps
generally
are the
pretty. Naps are tough, although today was weirdly easy for naps, knock on wood. But sleep has been good. Like the first week, obviously not, more so us just being like, is everything okay?
Right.
He has always slept pretty good. He hit 3 months yesterday. So we're approaching probably a regression like this month or next, but we deal with it as it comes. We have been lucky in the sleep rate. It makes everything so much easier during the day for sure. But even with that, it's like the days have been tough. Like there were weeks where it was just like there was no happiness during the day, like just none.
Yeah.
And just like, just nonstop fussiness. That has leveled off now, where it's like now it's like pretty much up until about 4 p.m. we can manage. After 4 p.m., 2 to 4 p.m., depends. After that time, this is just not happy. There's just you're always fighting. So it's that's more than anyone. It changes and you adjust, but it's been really wild.
I look back after, so my 1-year-old like sleeps amazing, so we're really lucky. He hit like about a 1 month regression or 1 year regression, sorry, and he's been waking up because he's teething, and that sucks. But I look back and when I had my first son, and I'm like, man, I used to think that was really stressful. And then I'm like, well, this is worse. That looks like cake now compared to like what's going on now. But it's a lot of, I don't know. It's just a lot of adapting, lack of sleep. I run my own business and things like that. So there's like a lot to it. And we live kind of removed from family, which your support systems are a huge, help in a lot of ways. So it's definitely, there's times where I've literally felt like I'm fucking losing it. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, it's
losing
happened.
My mind.
That's happened, I think, on a daily basis for my wife and I, probably over the course of the last like 2 months at least. There's one point in the day where one of us absolutely loses our shit in some capacity. Be it, tears, be it like frustration, whatever. But it again, you break through and you're like, oh shit, like I dealt with that and I'm still here. Oh, okay.
Right.
You learn a lot about the capacity of a person,
Yeah, it's definitely a growing experience. To me, I've told people it's like going through just these huge swings of like elation and also frustration. Like
Yeah.
like over and over and over again, where there's times when it's like I would do anything for this kid. I love him to death. I miss him when I'm away for like, 2 hours at a time. And then I want to wring his neck when he like,
Yeah.
when he like throws
Yeah.
a tantrum or something. You're just like,
Sure.
God damn it. Like,
It is the pendulum of human emotion, like just
yeah.
back and forth and back and forth. And you understand your own parents a little bit better too. And not only your own parents, you understand older people who
Right.
have parented a little bit better. It's like, yeah, this shit beats you up, man.
Yeah.
And like, we all very much want to judge like boomers and older people, and like there's a lot of really valid criticisms there. But like they had really tough lives as well, a lot of
Right.
them.
Yeah.
And not only that, like a lot of them just like had different pressure to have kids, have a lot of kids. My mom
Right.
was one of seven.
Wow.
My dad was one of five. Their parents, they had a different life than
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
so yes, there's valid criticisms against those older generations, but I empathize with them a little bit differently now, knowing like, oh yeah, they were on the other side of having the shit kicked out of them by their kids for years
Right.
and
Right.
years
Right.
too.
Yeah.
And now they're just like letting go and being like, fuck this, I'm going on vacation as much as I can. I'm gonna have a super comfortable life, and I am clinging to that
Yeah.
comfort.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that, but I understand it a little bit more.
I think for me it's been interesting because I'm 39, and I grew up in kind of like a Christian community. My brother had kids. Like my brother's 4 years older than me, but my nephew's 15 and the other one's 11. And so the age gap, like in like a lot of my friends who've had kids, and like I'm glad we waited a while. You know what I mean? Like
We
for
did too,
me,
yeah.
that was just what worked.
I wouldn't do it
Um
any other way, yeah.
yeah, but there's also that like thing inside of me where it's like they're past everything, right? And they're kind of
Yeah.
like just living their life, and we're kind of like stuck
In
back
it.
here trying to
Yeah.
survive type of things.
Well, I'll be 38 next month. My wife's the same age. And it's funny because, we've been kidless for a long time while people around us have had kids,
Yeah,
and they have looked at us with a, sense of envy.
right,
And I think they're now the shoe's on the other foot, and they're really leaning into it because now their kids are older
right.
and have that little more of a routine, little more independence, and
Yeah.
we're in it. And man, they are really, some of our friends are getting quite a kick out of watching us just like be in it now after years of not being it. And of course, judging. Of course,
Right,
you're always judging as a non-parent,
right.
thinking like, why do they do it like this? Why did that? We won't do it like that. We won't do it like this. So I think, yeah,
Oh yeah,
the shoe is very much on the other foot right now.
we told that you were like, we'll never like our kids won't watch TV, and it's like sit here for like
Man, Miss Rachel was on last
right,
night. I got a 3-month-old and I got the kid in front of the TV. Yeah.
right. No, I mean, I think in the very beginning, my son was like I would feed him, and I just have Bob's Burgers playing on in the background,
yeah.
and like he'd hear the intro music and immediately turn to the TV. And I was like, oh God, okay. But like it's that kind of stuff you say, like, I'll never, never, never. And then it's like the amount of insanity that's going on that you're just, I need a break. I just need a break.
Yeah. Just need
That,
5 minutes, 10 minutes,
they're gonna be
yeah.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
type of thing. So
I have a strange relationship to TV though, because, yes, I understand the like actual like developmental things at early ages, but I love television. I mean, I along with film, and I see a lot of value in some of it. But also, when I was a kid, I I suffered from insomnia for a couple years and just like could not sleep, just could not sleep. This was probably like late elementary school throughout middle school era. And my parents, bless their hearts, thought like, okay, well, we'll put a TV in his bedroom and maybe that will help him kind of to watch TV. Maybe that's what he needs to watch TV and fall asleep to TV. The exact opposite happened, where instead I just watched TV all night. And there was a significant period of my life in those years where every single night I was watching TV till 4 or 5 in the morning. And I distinctly remember this when reruns of Doogie Howser came on. That's when I knew, like, all right, Jimmy, you've gone too far. You're into the 5 o'clock hour now, approaching 6. It might be time to turn off the TV. Not saying that that's necessarily healthy, but I don't have the same attitude as some people. It's like absolutely no television. It's like there's good shit on TV, man.
Right.
There is some good shit, and there's a lot to be learned through seeing other people experience things, however you get it, film, television, theater, whatever. But again, it's not necessarily purveyant to like a toddler watching 20 hours a day, but TV will be a part of our life in some way, I feel like.
Yeah. I guess like, so kind of like how to kind of get into more like the format of the podcast is more just about questions. Yeah, like the format itself is more about your time in music, like how musically you've been influenced, and then just kind of the things that you're passionate about now. It's kind of funny. I think I could have guessed you were around my age specifically because like, what was it? You had the Summer of George EP.
Yeah.
So that there was a time where I was creating music and I like in my early 20s and I was thinking about using the name The Summer of George. And there's a video of you guys playing Graduate by Third Eye Blind.
Yeah, really old video. Yeah.
And American Hearts by Piebald. And so, which are all like fantastic. And like Third Eye Blind is probably one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah,
so
very special place in my heart.
I could kind of like guess on the age wise, but
we opened for them once, actually.
Really?
Yeah, we opened for them. Has the podcast started? Can I tell these amazing stories?
Should
I save them? Yes.
Yes, save them for now. But
sure.
I just want to thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know that
I appreciate it very much.
Being a new parent and all that stuff, there's very little time for almost anything. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for asking.
And I just wanted to start off the podcast just by kind of asking you, I like to ask everybody this, just if you can name either like an artist, a album, or a song that really kind of got you into the music scene or kind of like awakened something inside of you. Like for me, that would be like the Counting Crows. But like what would that be for you, or who would that be?
Yeah. It's interesting because I have like, well, both of these are kind of maybe suburban answers, but I think they're just true and good music. The earliest I can remember, the first album I ever bought was Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. And there's just something in that record that I really, really connected with, whether it was like the rage or like the expressiveness, like the almost like melodrama about it, because I was and am a sensitive, emotional person, and those were the kind of things I responded to. So that was first, but I don't think that really like I didn't have that like awakenedness feeling. I remember being like, okay, I'm old enough to buy CDs now. I'm responding to this on MTV. I'm going to go buy this CD, and I certainly loved it. The second record I bought was really, really what felt like that awakening inside of me, and it was Rage Against the Machine's Evil Empire. Nice. I mean, I still, when I hear that record, just get chills. I mean, just at the way that it sounds. The yes, the content, but also the material, the just the way that it feels and sounds, just the tactile, like nasally guitar glued to this like almost funky bass, and just cymbals and drums and everything, the way it all comes together and puts this like punchy, powerful experience in place. I just really, really responded to that. And then that music video too. When I was younger, I had this like old bass guitar in my closet that my uncle was throwing away. And I would just stand in front of the TV when that music video came on, and I would just get as close as I could to the TV, because it's like a live concert music video, essentially. It's a lot of concert footage.
Which one was it? Bulls on Parade?
Bulls on Parade, yeah, okay. Bulls on Parade. And I would get as close to the TV as I could, so like I was not able to see the outside world, depriving myself of, and I could pretend like I was on the stage,
right.
Feeling that energy of the people and giving that energy out. And that record really was probably what sparked it in me. And just it's the chicken and the egg. I'm right. Sure, like I was glued to and gravitating towards those things anyway. So I think I would have found something else if it wasn't Rage at the time. But the time and place of that record and just where I was in my life, just like it was truly an awakening for me. That would be the first example. The second, I've spoken about, I think, in interviews before, but it's just true. Pennywise's Unknown Road, that record absolutely blew my mind, and just the opening specifically, because if you're familiar with it, it starts with a piano intro. Mm-hmm. And my mom was a piano teacher, so I was, my life was piano music, just constantly playing in my house. And again, it's also very dramatic. It's a very dramatic opening, and I always tended towards the kind of dramatic like that. The soft piano intro stops, and then the most distorted, crunchiest, chuggiest guitar you have ever heard in your life kicks in, and it just like lit my brain on fire. I just was so in love with the way that felt to hear a guitar like that. So probably those two records started it all. But this was around like middle school time, and that time was very formative, and a lot of the things I liked then I still love. Third Eye Blind was in the mix there as well. But also like Ben Folds 5 and Ache and some early nu metal stuff, like the early Limp Bizkit and Korn records of just the time and the age that I was. That was really what sparked it all and set me up to get into kind of hardcore and punk.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that personally, my act of rebellion, especially being like a kid in youth group and stuff like that, was like blasting Slipknot and like Korn and like all those bands,
Deftones too, I think was probably bigger for me than Limp and Korn were at that time. And I think they're, time has certainly told that they are the better of those bands.
Yeah.
But even that first record was huge for me. I just wanted like crunchy, distorted guitar. Right. And if you remember that first Deftones record, remember the song, the first single, Bored? It's like jigga jigga dun dun dun. Yeah. I just ate that shit up. Like I just ate it hook, line, and sinker, and just really, really gravitated towards it. Always was gravitated towards guitars. Just like guitars, before I even knew what they were, I just was fascinated by them.
Did you have any older siblings?
Yeah, my sister is 3 years older than me.
Okay, because that was a huge influence in my life, was my brother's music.
Yeah.
And then that getting, that's how I was introduced to a lot of like early hip hop, and then also Nirvana, Pearl Jam, like those types of bands.
It's funny, my sister didn't necessarily like a lot of that music. She was like a musical theater nerd, and liked some modern rock music, but really when I was that age, she was hanging out with like the skater guys, and really, I kind of glommed onto them as older brother figures.
Yeah.
And her friends that age, just local skateboard dudes. I, you know, was one of those kind of classic cases of like, yeah, I skate, but I really only kind of like the music. I was never a good skateboarder
Right.
ever, but just loved the music. But I do remember I learned something really early at that time because, you got to think this was the 90s that I'm talking about now. This was like mid to early 90s. Um, Very much the era of like, you're a sellout or you're not,
Right.
like fuck you if you sold out, underground shit only. But I distinctly remember I was also really into the Smashing Pumpkins at the time, and that was not cool. I mean, that they were on MTV, they had a big single, not cool to like the Smashing Pumpkins as opposed to like Operation Ivy. And I remember taking shit from those older guys about it, and I just knew, even as I was 3 years younger than them, I just knew they were wrong. I just knew. I was like, you guys are fucking wrong, man. I'm listening to
Yeah.
this shit and it's awesome. I don't care that it's big. I don't care that it's on the radio. I don't care that it's your definition of sold out. I don't even give a shit, man. This shit rips.
Almost every person I've interviewed, which has not been a lot, it's been like 3, but they've all said Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
Like,
Again, guitars, just
yeah.
guitars and Weezer too, same kind of thing.
Yep.
Just that like kind of reappropriating like Black Sabbath for a more poppier kind of tone, but just yeah, Smashing Pumpkins were huge for me. I mean, like just the way those records sound, like you can I hate to be that like old man talking about digital versus analog.
You're talking to an old man. So.
You know,
Yeah.
as time goes on, I'm less convinced that the argument is actually, digital versus analog, as opposed to it's just we don't seek the right solutions digitally to get those analog kind of sounds, maybe. I don't know. But there is a difference into how those records feel and sound and how you can reach out and touch them.
Yeah.
Whereas with a digital recording, you can reach out and touch the screen, but there is this kind of flat compression. You lose some of the room, at least in a lot of modern, digital recordings. But those old to tape, 120 minutes bands, Matt Pinfield kind of bands like that, you can close your eyes and you're in the room. And I was always a very sensory person, and I always like glommed on to like just the textures of the things I was watching or the things I was hearing. And those albums just have such great textures. And really, you were kind of saying this earlier about like the structure of the podcast and what it is about music that you like. And really that's what it is for me. It's texture.
Yeah.
And like, I just love the way those records feel in my mind. Smashing Pumpkins particularly, just like, it's just so cool. I mean, it just sounds so good.
And is that something that you've tried to emulate, like on your guys' records and whatever bands that you've been in? Is kind of
definitely
like texture, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not that texture, but a texture. And I think in Polar Bear Club years that we tried to do that, but that band we were a democracy in most ways. And that was great and served us really well, and like none of us could have done it on our own anyway. We needed each other to figure it all out. But I think because of that, and we were super collaborative too. We usually, we didn't fight too hard on our mixes, or we weren't super involved with. We trusted a lot, and I'm not saying the results were bad. I think that a lot of the results were great. I love the way a lot of those records sound. But I think as I've gotten older and on the other side of that experience, I'm way more concerned with having a texture to the songs I record that I am really, really proud of myself and interested by and have feelings around.
Yeah.
Polar Bear Club was just like big drums, big guitars, go. And that was exactly what was right for that band. I'm a little, just older now, and like, I think about things a little bit differently. I think about textures and records a little bit differently.
Which, like, I might be kind of missing the point of what you're saying, but I think one of the one of the things that my introduction to Polar Bear Club was I was doing a cross country was it cross country? No, I was going from Bellingham, Washington, which is right by the Canadian border, all the way down to Tucson, Arizona, with a friend. So we did like a road trip down there, and a friend of mine made it like a mix. And it had like Shook Ones on there and like a bunch of other different kind of bands. And his devotee came on, and I liked the guitars in the beginning, and I was like, oh, this is kind of like a little more like I mean, I hate to say this, but like it was a little more pretty. It was a little more like I was like emo-ish. It felt like to me, and I was like, that's
Sure.
what. And then that fucking guitar comes in, and it's like, and your voice hits, and I was like, what the fuck? Like,
It's so funny that you cite that song because I think of that song as like a forgotten Polar Bear Club song.
it's my favorite song.
But this is the second time this week now that this song has come up. Someone randomly messaged me on Instagram a couple days ago and was asking me about that song, and it was like, oh wow, that was like a song that I feel like it maybe got buried a little bit, but a song I really like as well. But I think you're definitely onto something. I mean, that was like the clean and dirty like transition and like hard transition that PBC used to kind of ride.
It was more your voice, though. The texture in
Yeah.
your voice. I did not know whether I liked it or not at first.
Sure.
And right, because I was like, it gripped me. I was like, okay, I was not expecting that. And it kind of it's not exactly, but it had like a little bit of a graveliness that was sort of reminiscent of like, I don't know if you've listened to Shook Ones, but like,
yeah, we toured with them.
Oh yeah, okay. So
Many
they're
times,
from Bellingham. They're from Bellingham, Washington, originally. But it had that kind of like graveliness to it that there was something that texturally in my ear was something that I was like, this is like gripping in a way that I don't like necessarily can put my finger on, and I was hooked after that.
That came from and a lot of Shook Ones, stuff came from like Kid Dynamite, or I mean, PBC was named after a Silent Majority song, and that was a line that they towed really well vocally. But just honestly, that sound was by accident. That wasn't planned. The way that my voice ended up sounding.
Yeah.
For most of PBC, I mean, for like it was if you listen to the Polar Bear Club demo, it sounds very different, and it's kind of finding it. Redder the Better EP cemented a little bit more, then Sometimes Things Just Disappear cements a little bit more and more and more. But it wasn't really ever a plan. It honestly was because when we recorded the Redder the Better, we were still in a very early stage as a band and as people. And when you're a young band, you don't ever have a PA in your practice space, or you don't have a PA that's loud enough to hear over the band. So we don't really know what the vocals sound like when we're writing. We didn't record our own demos. So the band is learning what the vocals do while you're recording them. It's night and day from how I do things now. But really that sound and that like dichotomy was a discovery. That was very much like, this is working. Right. Yeah. I don't even mean like working like from a sense that like we were necessarily excited about. It was almost like by necessity. We're like, all right, this works, right? All right, this will get it done. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
So really that sound was kind of by accident and became just the sound of Polar Bear Club. But it is funny because when you so much back then, like people when they would meet me or meet the band just did not believe that I was the singer, did not believe that sound came out of my voice. But it almost goes back to the wrestling stuff because it is kind of an affect. It is kind of a performance. I mean, it's not authentic. That voice, the gravelly side of that, is not natural. That is very ramped up. That's very like heightened and performative and dramatic. That shift you're talking about, just super, super dramatic. And I don't know, that was the stuff that I always tended towards. So it made sense that we landed there, but it wasn't conscious. It was just kind of happened.
I could imagine that I was talking to Joe Mustin from Beloved and a band called Advent. I don't know if you know him.
I think so.
But he's Beloved was a band that was, I don't want to say like hardcore, but anyway, he was basically the screamer for their band. And I was talking to him and I was like, you're known for this? Like, is there any type of technique that you use, or do you just like go full bore? He's like, I just go full bore.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was like, is that, how, when you're touring and you're singing night after night after night, like what kind of havoc does that wreak on, your vocal cords in general?
You know what? It's so weird because, like, I mean, so that sound was born out of necessity and also maybe panic too, in a way, because my memory's a little fuzzy. I can't remember if it was Redder or sometimes just things just disappear. They were recorded at the same place, so I conflate some of the memory. But I believe it was on Redder where I had a panic attack in the studio. I just was tracking. It was my first time in like a good, nice studio with a producer, hearing me sing.
Mm-hmm.
I never even really heard myself. I mean, I was in bands a bunch up into that point, but it was
Right.
just different. It was different now. And it wasn't working. It wasn't working. I was failing. I was in the booth. I was pitchy. I wasn't sounding good. I was sounding weak. I was holding back, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, I just need a break. I'm going to go take a restroom break. And I locked myself in the bathroom and I just sat on the floor and I just like died inside my own body, like for 15 minutes, just stared,
Yeah.
freaking the fuck out.
Right.
And I just came out just like, all right, let's just fucking shred it. I don't care if I don't have a voice anymore. I don't care if I lose my voice. I don't care. I just want to get through this and and
Right.
and do it well and with some emotion. And really that was a lot of the impetus behind the lyrics towards Most Miserable Life, the song that
Right.
ends that
Yeah.
EP. It's the same, it's that kind of expression came from that. But to yes, full bore for me. I should have done the training. I should have done the stuff. I mean, I warmed my voice up. I
Right.
I I took care of it. I didn't drink and party when I was on tour. I like would go on vocal rest for days at a time if I need to, straight up not talking to anybody. I took care of my voice, but I didn't have like technique, and I maybe should have, but I think everything happened the way that it was supposed to. I mean,
Yeah.
really, I don't have any. I have some regrets, but they're not around. They're not around like the fact that Polar Bear Club ended a lot, largely in part due to my voice. Um, I'm glad that that happened. Honestly, I think that my voice was always finite, and I like things that are finite. I didn't want that band to go on forever. And the fact that my voice kind of gave out made it a little easier for us to make that decision.
Yeah.
We should have made maybe a year or two earlier, but yeah, it just was going full bore, and it wasn't easy. I mean, it was honestly my rhythm, like not so much towards the end of our touring career, but in the height of our touring career, like kind of the start and mid, my rhythm would always be like, all right, practice a couple days up to the tour. First show sounds great. Second show, voice is starting to get lost a little bit. Third show sounds like shit, don't have a voice at all. And then fourth show, it just kind of reached this like stasis that would maintain for the rest of the tour. And it was not like the best night, but it was like somewhere in the middle. It was just like, okay,
Right.
yeah, it sounds good for maintaining this. But it gave me a lot of anxiety. I was always like worried about my voice.
I think as somebody, I saw you guys I drove from Bellingham to Seattle, so it was like an hour and a half drive. And I went to go see you guys. I think you were on the Take Action tour, maybe at that point. It was with Bayside.
Bayside, yeah.
Yeah. And what always kind of really impressed me, or just like what gripped me too, is the performance you guys put on. And the from my perspective, and just as a fan, you guys put on one of the best live shows that I've been a part of. And specifically you as a singer are so engaging. Like, and I'm not trying to knock other bands, but there are bands who the crowd does more work than they do.
Yeah.
And to me, what draws a crowd in is when you involve, share, and like I don't know, and you put forth the energy that the crowd came to see, right?
That means a lot that you say that. I appreciate you saying that. And
yeah.
I think like that is what I kind of consider my life's work. Right. When I look back on like the stuff that I'll be remembered for or whatever like nostalgia-y way you want to think about your legacy. When I think about my legacy, it's that. It's our commitment to doing that every single night, no matter what. And honestly, I think if we had found a better way to capture that sound, this goes back to the textural stuff of a recording. Yeah. I just think we were a better band to see live than to listen to. And we have some great sounding records and great sounding songs on record, but I think when you saw it live is when it actually clicked and when it was like, oh, okay. And I think if we had found a better way to capture that feeling on record, which we just didn't really know how to do, we maybe would have gotten farther than we did. But that doesn't matter to me now at all.
Right.
But I do think of I think of myself as a writer and a performer most of all. Like I am proud of my lyrics and proud of how we presented the songs and performed them every single night. And that's something I learned early. I remember distinctly, I went on my first tour when I was 17 years old. I was playing guitar in a kind of Kid Dynamite, Shook One style punk hardcore band called The Disaster. And this was 2001, 2002. This was a long time ago. And we did a tour opening for Modern Life is War, which right when they were starting to first pop, really starting to pop off. And I watched them every single night. And I remember, we played all over and they gave the same show no matter what. 2 people there, 500 people there. It was the same show. And I took that really seriously and I committed myself to that no matter what, because it makes no difference to me. It's like, I'm not going to waste your time if you're here. If you're here, we're going to connect, whether or not you like it.
Right.
Maybe. But I'm going to give you exactly the mode of expression if you are one person here, or if you are 1,000 people here.
Right.
That's something I am very proud of.
That's what I always found really kind of compelling about a lot of like the hardcore and post-hardcore shows, where I have a very specific memory of going to see the band for Seems Forever, and Elliot, and I think it was like the early November on tour, nice. Like way back when.
Elliot was like my second show ever, and it blew my mind too. Yeah.
And it was Elliot was on their last legs on that time. I think it was like part of their kind of farewell tour. Which Chris, I guess the singer, is like, I've reached out to him. We're supposed to talk, I think, at some point. But that album, the False Cathedrals album, is amazing.
Yeah. US Songs too. The album before that is very, very close to my heart. That was
Songs in the Air.
Is it Songs in the Air or is it called US Songs?
Oh, it might be US Songs. And then I think their album after False Cathedrals was Songs in the Air.
Yeah. I think you're right. If only we had an internet tool at our disposal. But both of those records, huge for me. And wore those. I had them on cassette. Well, they were like ripped cassettes.
Right.
Walking to school, like wore those out. Loved that band.
I was a huge First Seems Forever fan at the time. Same. And Jason Gleason, I remember, put on some of the best live shows, but I very specifically remember uh his involvement, his ability to perform every night. And there was a certain point where he would throw the mic into the crowd, and I could hear my voice on the PA, and I was like, that is the fucking raddest thing I've
Yeah.
ever felt. Like,
Yeah.
because it was like an acknowledgement
Sure.
of the participation of, like, it's not just the band, it's like everybody around it,
Yeah,
you know.
it's a communal expression, and it's yeah, like the band is in control of it and moderating it, I guess. But
Right.
it's more symbiotic than view audience member and presenter, I guess, than traditionally would be the case.
Yeah. So for you, what were, like, growing up, like, what, or not growing up, sorry, not, but when you went on tour, what were some of your favorite bands to tour with?
I mean, when I was young, like pre-PBC, we went on tour with Modern Life is War. We went on tour with Strike Anywhere, which PBC also toured with Strike Anywhere. Uh, Amazing bands to tour with. But then we also did a tour with From Ashes Rise, which is, I don't know if that's like your type of
I've
stuff,
actually never
but
heard of them.
it's like, kind of crusty, heavy, doom, hardcore,
Okay.
just fast, great, members of Tragedy, like just awesome band. But those early days, loved that kind of stuff. PBC time, yeah, we toured with. I mean, the tour we did with Shook Ones was pretty good. It was a UK mainland European tour.
Nice.
Title fight opening for Shook One's opening for PBC, or it might have been Shook One's title fight. I can't remember at the time what it was, but that was a really, really fun tour. We did a bunch of cool like one-offs too. Like we like our paths crossed with Ceremony a bunch in Europe, just randomly. We never did a full tour with them, but we always like got along with them, and we would every a lot bands go over to Europe and stuff around the same time, specifically around like summer festivals and things like that. So
Hmm.
you'd cross paths here and there on your little like one-off shows. And
Yeah.
Ceremony was a band that we always like loved when we would cross paths with, because we never did full on tours, but like we played shows here and there with them. And God, what an exciting band to watch. We had a similar relationship with Fucked Up too, where like we never toured with Fucked Up, and probably wouldn't. Like we would have loved to, but they probably would never have asked us to like open for them or anything like that. But we were on the same Australian cycle as them for
Okay.
Soundwave Festival. And so we would go to Australia at the same time in this huge festival that Australia used to do called the Soundwave Festival. This is a festival that's like headlined by Metallica. It's massive.
Oh, okay.
And it's like the only touring that would happen in Australia for a time. They kind of monopolized it for that time. But it was a very easy tour. It was the cushiest tour you could ever do. I mean, it was literally, hey, Polar Bear Club, you have 3 hotel rooms every night. You get half an hour set every day. You're going to play one show. You'll have 3 days off. You're going to fly
Damn.
to the next show, play again, and just repeat, repeat, repeat.
Yeah.
Such a fun time. It was essentially a vacation. But those big tours, the kind of like-minded bands would kind of all find each other, and for some
Yeah.
reason, us and Fucked Up would always kind of get together, probably because we smoked weed and they like smoking weed and we like smoking weed. Um, so we always liked our time with them and played a couple of side shows with them in Australia. But I mean, like our people, like our touring people are like still my friends to this day. People who were at my wedding and I would go to theirs, or like Fireworks and 4 Years Strong, and we did a bunch of tours with Every Time I Die, and not that these guys would think about it now, but it's been specifically exciting watching Turnstile blow up because,
Hmm.
we toured with Trapped Under Ice a bunch of times and really got along with them. There was a time where I would go on stage and sing guest vocals with Trapped Under Ice for shows, like during our tours with
Nice.
them and stuff. And they were just like-minded people. And like, I don't keep in touch with them regularly anymore. I saw Justice recently-ish, but they we they were like us and we were like them. We felt a kinship with those kind of bands.
Yeah. As far as like, you guys had a couple different lineup changes, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah.
How difficult was it to integrate new people?
It fucking sucks. It sucks ass. No fault of the people.
Right.
Well, actually, speaking of integrating new people, Daniel Fang from Turnstile auditioned to be one of those people.
Really? Nice.
He auditioned to be in PBC. We went with someone else, not for any other. Like Daniel's obviously an amazing drummer, but this other guy was just a slightly better fit. And it worked out for him.
Right.
It worked out for him.
Yeah.
But no, that always sucked. I mean, that always fucking sucked. And it was a lot of work for the people left, typically Chris and myself. It was a lot of work for us and required a lot of patience and like time. And it just was tough. It's hard to like, I think a lot of the people that ended up in PBC or like the replacement people were people we knew already and were close with. Right. So it wasn't necessarily a personality thing at all. It's just like you have this like musical connection with this core group and you've spent this time building this like muscle memory amongst the five of you, and then you got to like start over and build it up again, and that just was not very fun.
How many lineup changes were there?
Well, you want all of them? You want all? Here's
no. I'm not going to give you that. I mean,
no, I'll give you from. So I wasn't in Polar Bear Club when it first started.
Okay.
So the Polar Bear Club demo was recorded before they had a singer. I joined after that, and it was an entirely different band, different bass player, drummer, and second guitarist. Again, just Chris and I as the original members. Nate Morris then came in. Then Greg Odom, our bass player on Sometimes Things Just Disappear, came in, and then Emmett came in, and then Greg left, and Goose came in, and that after Greg left, which was right after the recording of Sometimes Things Just Disappear, that started what would be the core group of PBC: Emmett, Chris, myself, Nate, and Goose. That iteration was what started touring full time. Mm-hmm. And then a couple years in, Emmett left and was replaced. And then Nate left shortly after that. And then Goose left shortly after that. And then ended up with the kind of last version of Polar Bear Club. Yeah. So there was a lot of member changes. It was stuff we were not unaccustomed to, sure. But it was never fun to deal with or get people caught up to speed. It was just kind of a slog to do.
Touring life in general, was that something that was a stressful? Was it mentally draining? Was it a blast? Was it like all those things?
Yeah, it's all of those things. It is all of those things, you know. Like that was also part back to what we were talking about before about like PBC's live show. That was another reason why our show was the way it was, because it was the most exciting part of our day by a long shot, you know, by a Mississippi mile, you know, just like, and we relished in it. Not only, it was the only exercise I was getting that day, was then. It was the only fun I was going to have, and it was the small half an hour of a 24-hour day that I was going to be able to do the thing that I was there to do. So we glommed onto that time with that in mind for all those reasons. But yeah, touring life is everything that you would imagine. I think it's well documented territory, you know, at this point, as opposed to like when I was younger and starting and everyone thinking like it was a constant party. Which, you know, yeah, there's partying, it's fun, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of a lot of growth as well. I mean, you get put in situations, you know, Polar Bear Club was a wide age spread. By the time we were kind of full time, I think I was 22, 23, and then the oldest members were like 32, 33, maybe 30. So we had a bit of a spread to like help us navigate
Sure.
situations. You know,
Yeah.
like this is a really adult situation. I'm 22. Oh, I've got a 32-year-old here to kind of walk me through this.
Yeah.
But you are out there on your own and the show has to go on. And so like when I think about touring, I think of it as like solving problems, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh shit, like tire blew out and we have, 6 hours left to drive. Show starts at X time. Okay, if we call so and so, they're an hour behind us. We can borrow their gear, but they don't have a snare drum. So we'll call so and so for the snare drum, and then we'll hobble it all together. You three will go in their van. We'll get a rental for the rest of everyone else. We'll get there and we'll all get there in time. We'll walk up, we'll play, and we'll go.
Yeah.
That's what I think of as tours, like solving like logistical problems like that.
Yeah.
So there's a part of it that's my memory of it, but also depression was a big part of it for me near the end. Um, and I think a lot of us near the end, it was just lonely,
Mm.
just like when the time PVC ended, I was 28 or 27, and I was just had been living my life that way for a long time at
Yeah.
that point. I had missed funerals, missed weddings, missed parties, and I was coming home to like the world just moving on without me, and my friends all having like different vernacular almost, like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
my me being kind of like a ghost to my family, just not having roots.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize how much that was depressing me until I kind of looked back on it all. But so there's a chunk where that's what I think of as touring is depression,
Yeah.
for me. But that's not 100% of it. There's a lot of
Sure.
fun and good
Yeah.
times and meaningful stuff around it as
Yeah.
well. And just, you know, travel, seeing things. I'm very happy I return to my home and where I'm from and live in now, having done those things. And I
Right.
and I have come back with that knowledge, typical like narrative arc, returning
Yeah.
home
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
knowledge. Yeah.
That's man, that's a long chunk of your life. And I
Yeah.
feel like your 20s are such growth periods. And in ways that like your 30s are cool and are awesome, but there's a lot of learning and a lot of life growing going on. And to do that in the with the view of a windshield, um, you know, there's a totally different experience. So when Polar Bear Club was done and they were done touring, what was the transition like out of that life?
Hard. I mean, really hard. I mean, I just like I was married. I was living in a different city. My wife and I lived in Jersey City, New Jersey at the time that Polar Bear Club ended.
I'm a Jersey
And
boy, so
there you go.
originally, yeah.
We lived there for 5 years.
Why?
Well, so I mean, I lived wherever my wife lived,
Sure.
essentially. That's where my home was, even though I was
Yeah.
on the road. And that's where she got her first job out of grad school. So we moved down there and I continued touring and then would come back. That would be my home.
Yeah.
So when PBC ended, that's where my home was Jersey City, New Jersey. Um, and it was a really hard transition because not only was I 27, 28, and I didn't have a resume. I didn't have work
Right.
experience that you can easily explain. I was starting over, very, very much so. So I was unemployed for about 5 months, and I just was interviewing at jobs. Also didn't have like service industry experience at that time, so I couldn't like pick stuff up. And
Right.
I was kind of adamant about finding an office job. I was kind of like, I know I could probably get into the service industry now at this age, but I don't know. I had a suspicion about it. I had a reluctance towards it because I had friends who were in there and like it really sucked them up. It really,
Yeah.
really sucked them up. And I was kind of like, you know what? I'm just getting out of a scenario that I was really sucked up in by my own design. I was in a band and like I'm gonna try and get an office gig and kind of see what that's like. I want to do the polar opposite of what I have been doing for the last 6 or 7 years of my life. So I just was applying to jobs, applying to jobs, applying to jobs, and I ended up getting a job in a call center, working nights in a call center down the street from my apartment, actually. So I
Okay.
could walk to work. It was in the same office building as my wife, too. So we had a good little setup there for a while.
Yeah,
Walk to
yeah.
work. I worked nights. She worked during the day. Um, the company I worked for was a subsidiary of Amazon, and I just started working, becoming kind of who I am now. This like boring
Right.
office person. I still do call center stuff. I work in call center management and operations
Oh,
now.
wow.
I
Nice.
still do that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I learned to do and kind of what I liked doing, in professional world. But the transition was tough. Weirdly, though, being in a band, I think like helps you in corporate culture in a weird way because everyone's impressed by it.
Right.
Everyone's impressed
Yeah.
by it. And everyone thinks it's so cool. And the guy who actually gave me that first job, I still talk to him to this day. He was a big Bad Religion fan. And
Oh,
he
nice.
saw Polar Bear Club opening for Bad Religion like a
Nice.
year before. And I'm interviewing for him. He pulls me aside after the interview. He's like, "How do I know you?" And I was like, I used to be in this band. He's like, "I saw you play like 4 months ago or whatever." That got me that job, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, up to that. So from that point, once I got that job, I was more settled. But there was about 5 months in between that where I was aimlessly wandering, not sure what I was going to do next. But honestly, I mean, so there was that period. Then I got the job. I didn't think about music though, or touch my guitar, or write a song for like 2 years after Polar Bear Club ended. I mean, I really put it down. Like I really,
Yeah.
really put it to bed. I put the guitar in the closet, I closed the door, and I didn't open that door for 2 years. And I think I needed to do that. But when I got back to it, it felt so good, and like I felt totally reborn and coming to it with fresh ears and fresh eyes. I think a thing that not a lot of bands talk about post their careers, or some bands that are maybe from our era, is how your taste changes.
Hmm.
And like, I just think I didn't, I like, I liked Polar Bear Club music. I still like it, but the bands that we ended up kind of associating, as much as I like appreciate and love them personally and love their like talent for what they do, it wasn't really music I listened to or was excited by.
Yeah.
And that's just me, but it wasn't for me. And I felt like I felt a little like an alien in that world to some extent. And I really spent those 2 years after PBC like rediscovering my love for music. Kind of lost it in a
Hmm.
way. Um, and that happens to a lot of bands. It's like how many songs you want to write songs about your life,
Right.
but your life is writing songs
Right.
and playing songs and being in a band. How many songs can you write about being on tour?
All right. Yeah.
And that just it became this insular thing, and I didn't know what kind of music I liked. I also didn't know what I wanted to say anymore. I didn't know what I had to say anymore. And
Yeah.
so I think I took that time after PBC and just reset and relearned what it is that excited me about music. And honestly, to go full circle, it all just went back to that 90s stuff and that
Yeah.
sound and that texture of music. Um, is something I sort of rediscovered. Honestly, yeah, I grew up in like the punk and hardcore core world, but I don't really consider myself that in terms of my identity. I more
Right. Right.
identify myself as like an alternative rock listener, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, So I think I had to like rediscover that a little bit, I guess.
Was there any point in the band where you're like, doing I'm doing this, but like, and I enjoy it to an extent, and I don't really know, like, I don't know if I would necessarily be identifying with this music if I wasn't in this band, or I wasn't like, because what I'm hearing you is like it almost sounds like you were like, I'm doing this, but I don't have that much like internal connection
Well,
in terms of sound.
I don't want to like misrepresent it. We always had the internal connection. I think
Right.
what I was missing, or the piece that I was missing, is like who was listening to it and why they were listening to it. Because I think a good band, like a band that lasts, has to know has to balance kind of two things. One, what excites them.
Yeah.
I mean, well, there's kind of a couple camps here. There's like thinking about like the J Mascis of the world, or like the David Bowies of the world. They are making music and they only are thinking about what excites them, right? They
Right.
don't necessarily care about what the people want to hear. It just so happens that what excites them also excites the people.
Right.
PBC wasn't like a band of geniuses like that. We were good and we were talented, but we weren't like that level of genius. So I think bands of our ilk and bands that did what we did well, that was a big part of it. What excites us first? And then like how does that translate to what people actually want to hear from us? And
Right.
what will exceed their expectations and surprise them from what we present to them. Not that you write with that goal. Like we never wrote a song thinking like we need to write a song that other people like.
Right.
We wrote for ourselves very much. But I just think I just stopped understanding what the person who listened to Polar Bear Club wanted out of it
Hmm.
anymore near the end. Um, we really were always excited by our songs and excited by the last record for sure. And we only wrote to please ourselves. But like it never comes out the same way you hear it in your head. And hopefully it doesn't lose so much where it's not like good anymore. I just think I was losing the balance. I was like, all right, I'm excited by this. I don't really know how other people hear this now, though. I don't know what's lost in translation. I don't know what is good, what's bad. We were just in the weeds, we were just like we had lost ourselves. Um, if that makes sense. But it just,
Yeah.
I
Well, I mean, the last album, obviously, there was a stark shift in vocals on
yeah.
that. And was there a sense in there? Because I remember reading your thing that was like, why it just hot garbage came out.
Yeah.
And sorry,
Background child.
no, yeah, my son was standing at the door, and I was like, one second, and my wife just like came over and grabbed him. Like,
Oh my god, I love that. I don't want to keep you two, but I
no,
should
it's
probably
no,
bounce
no,
soon
it's
too.
this
But
is gonna
however you want to wrap it,
no.
yeah.
They just
No,
they
yeah,
he probably just woke up.
yeah.
He takes like an afternoon nap or whatever. But
Oh, you're on the West Coast. I forgot too. Yeah,
yeah. It's all good. Um, and like I remember reading the thing. I remember reading the thing, and I was like, I tried to sing, and it just sounded like garbage. Like it sounded
yeah.
like hot garbage. Did you know when you put that record out that you were like, I don't know how this is going to go over with people? Because I think other people might have been like really accustomed to the graveliness of your voice, and like what was it like losing that sound, I guess, of your voice, and then trying to put something out?
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to say this because I like that record. Um, the guys in the band like that record. I'm proud of so much about that record. And I know a lot of people like that record. And I don't want to like ruin any aspect of it for them. But again, it's like at this point, that's like almost 15 years ago. I mean, it's like 10 years ago at this point. Let's just talk openly about, at least I'm going to talk openly about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Um, that record is kind of my one big regret. And I don't mean it like that I'm not proud of it. I just think if I could do it again, I would have ceased production on that record. But we were just young. We didn't know. I didn't have the confidence in my decision making to like pull the plug on a big budget project like that.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I wish I had, because that's what we were dealing with on that record. Like the intention of that record, I'm fully confident if we released the version of that record that we had planned to, um, just would have been different. Like the idea with that record was that the vocals were going to be harder and more
Oh
gravelly,
wow.
and the
Interesting.
songs were going to be a little poppier, and the contrast was going to go. We were going to try and stretch the contrast a little further apart.
Yeah.
And there's actually a demo of Why Live When You Can Die that we recorded before we recorded that album, where my voice is largely the same, largely like what you know of as Polar Bear Club. And it sounds really cool and good. And like that was the idea of that record. But we went in and something happened to my voice and it wasn't doing what we thought it was going to do, and we muscled through because that's what we did as a band. That's what we were used to doing as a band, touring. You power through,
Right,
you power
right.
through, you white knuckle through. And there's a lot of really good stuff on that record. Some of my favorite melodies are on that record. Some of my favorite lyrics are on that record. The production of that record is one of the best sounding Polar Bear Club records. Obviously, it's Will. He makes amazing sounding records. But if I could do it again, I would have stopped the whole thing and said, let's stop this and let's recenter ourselves, because it just got away from us. It got away from me. Everyone else played amazing on the record. It sounds good, but it got away from me. And I think at that time in the band, just naturally with all the member changes and where things had landed, I had become kind of an authority figure in the band. It was always kind of me and Chris, but like Chris was maybe even deferring to me at that time as well. And I don't think I took that role serious enough. And I should have stepped in as the leader of that band and said, this isn't the intention of this project. We're pulling the plug. We're going to go and we're going to go back and we're going to write more and better and different. And we're going to come back when we're more ready to do this, because we've got this big hurdle thrown at us and we shouldn't white knuckle through it. Let's take it offline and refigure this thing out. That's maybe what I would have done, but I think also the way that it happened the way it did, like there's good reasons that it happened the way it did too, and led to good aspects. But really, Chris disagrees with me on this. By the way, I've talked to him about this. He has no regrets, and as he shouldn't. Like this is very inside baseball,
right.
And I say that hoping that the listeners of this and the people who love that record can compartmentalize this information as I can when I hear things about records I love and like hear shitty things about them. But that's just my big regret from PBC, is that I didn't do that and I didn't stop it, because that just wasn't the idea. We dealt with what we had and we played the hand we were dealt, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't think that record's a total failure. I think the record sounds good. I think there's great songs on it. But at the time where we were at our career, we needed a home run, like a grand slam. And, say what you will about that record, it's not a grand slam. So yeah, I don't know.
How'd you know when things were done for you guys? Like what was that process like, as far as like we're done with the band, or like?
Yeah, it's funny. So we finished Death Chorus, and that was a really kind of stressful, tough time. And we knew, we had to go do some touring on it. And we toured it, and we had spent probably 5 years before that only doing support tours,
Yeah.
very minimal headlining shows, one-offs, sure, here and there, but primarily we spent that time as a support band. And so Death Chorus was coming out, and now is our big time to do a headliner. And we put together this awesome headlining package. And like some shows were great. The first and last show of that tour, the last Polar Bear Club show was incredible. It was in Philadelphia. It was the last show of the Death Chorus tour. It was an amazing show.
Where'd you
New
play?
York, the church.
Oh, Unitarian.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
New York, amazing. Toronto, amazing. All of our staple cities were amazing. We had a lot of good shows. We had a lot of fucking shitty shows on that tour. A lot of shows where just like, we had Citizen opening up for us. They were just starting to pop off, and just the times were moving past Polar Bear Club, and we were kind of seeing that firsthand. And so that tour ended, and it didn't go the way that we needed it to go or the way we wanted it to go. And got home, took a couple days, just collected my thoughts, and I called Chris. I can't remember if he called me or I called him, but he called me, and he had about 2 weeks off, and we were slated to go to Europe in 2 weeks. And Chris called me and was like, "There's no way I can go to Europe. There's just no way I can mentally do it, and I don't think I can do this band anymore." And and he was very nervous about what I was going to say, and he was anxious about it. And I told him, "Dude, was 1 day away from calling you and saying the exact same thing. Yeah. Like, this is done. This is just done, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's done." And so, he and I were the decision makers at the time. So we ended it, called all the people, told everyone, cancel the European tour, which, was shitty and sucked and not happy to do. But like, there was just no way we were going to be able to do it mentally. And it was done. And then we were just thrown into the world and normal citizens. Very strange. Super strange. Super strange feeling.
Into Jersey City. Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in Bergen County, which is like, I don't know, probably about 20 minutes or outside New York City. So around Jersey City and in that area.
I loved living there. I lived around the corner from Benny Horowitz, drummer of Gaslight Anthem, who's a good old friend. We started a band down there, and we're jamming, and like had a fucking blast living down there. I miss it to some extent. I'm glad I wasn't
when I go back, which is like very, very, very rarely, because my entire family moved to the West Coast.
Yeah.
I miss my wife and I moved to Philadelphia for a year for her to get her bachelor's in nursing at Drexel. And so I got to go kind of back there, and
nice.
There's still people I have connections with and whatnot. I lived there until I was 22, 23, and then I moved out to Seattle and whatnot. But
I love Seattle too, though.
Yeah. It's and now I live out right outside of Portland. I live in Vancouver, which is like across the river there. I guess I kind of want to just ask, like, what's going on now? Like, what are you passionate about? What's life look like now?
Well, so now it looks like a baby, nonstop baby stuff. But that's just what this time is, and when you have a newborn. But like project wise, obviously film is a big part of my life, and very passionate person about film. And honestly, I sometimes feel like I identify more with that than music sometimes. But so I started this like pandemic movie club thing that has been going now for 3 years, and absolutely love it. It's run on Discord. So I do that. We essentially watch a film a week, then get together on Sundays and discuss it. It's really cool. I think the Discord server itself has like just under like 100 people in it.
Oh wow!
But active is more like 20, and then the meetings ends up more like 12 to 7 people. But it's from all over. It's there's people from the UK, West Coast, East Coast, all in between. It's really, really useful and necessary in my life right now to
Yeah.
have this like touch point of film watching and discussion. So that's really important to me. And then music, like I said, I'm starting to build out a small like studio setup, and I play in a band right now called Shy Tooth. That's, a little different from Polar Bear Club. It's more like power pop, noise pop. And we're gonna start recording our own records, and
Huh.
so that's what we're working on now. So
Yeah.
that'll take some time because we work in it like once a week because we all have kids and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But um, I still write songs and watch movies. That's what I do. Now there's a
I'm
baby in the mix.
Yeah. My bachelor's degree was in TV and film. So
Oh, amazing.
my original, I was like, if I'm gonna go to school, like I'm gonna study something that I want to study. And
Yeah,
so I ended up like literally my job at school was to like watch films. Like we had film
it's the
appreciation.
best. Oh yeah,
My one of my professors was like wrote a book on David Lynch, and
so funny.
yeah, it was just it was awesome. It was great. I don't know how translatable it was in the world. I was kind of doing the,
I mean, yeah,
taking the train to New York City and was doing some kind of like production stuff, but I kind of realized how much like, one, you had to bust your ass and not get paid a lot, and then two, just like the way I wasn't made for like the style of living that was in New York
yeah,
and New Jersey. It just
same,
wasn't. Yeah,
same. That's why
it
we
just,
left.
I
But you know
couldn't.
what?
Yeah.
I will say, because I have a useless degree as well. I have a degree in acting and theater. I went to like a BFA program
Oh,
for
okay.
acting. And it's embarrassing to say, but I'm not embarrassed by it for the same reason that you might relate to as well. Working in production, right? That's really what I experienced, was working on a production. And we
Right.
worked, part of that program, we worked every angle of the production. I built costumes, I built scenery, I performed, I did makeup, I did everything. I worked productions.
Right.
And that kind of work ethic, I think I am very glad I went to school for that,
Right.
actually. Yeah, it doesn't translate to anything I do now. Well, not most of the things I do now. But it is it did instill, like, my program was essentially I would go to class all day. And then if you were not in a production, you were working on a production, you had work study
Right.
from 6 to 10 every night. So I'm in class all day, and then I'm doing labor and work building shit from
Right.
six
Right.
to ten every single night.
Yeah.
Um, that's like that was I was really happy to learn how to work like that. That
Yeah.
instilled a work ethic that I don't see in a lot of people. But I didn't do any like film stuff in school, but I was very passionate about it. And there was a class, probably one of the best classes I ever took. It was called David Lynch and Orson Welles, and it just was a first half of the semester is Orson Welles, second half is David Lynch.
Yeah.
And I fought to get into that class. I had to sit down with the professor because I was doing my work study.
Yeah.
So the screenings I couldn't go to because most of the time I was working on a production until 10 p.m.
Right. Yeah.
I sat down with the professor of that class and I said, listen, I will do whatever it takes to be a part of this class. If you put the films available in the library, I'll watch them on my own time. I'll watch them, overnight if I have to, but I'm taking this class. And she was just like, okay, cool. You can. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
sure. And it
Yeah.
still was one of the best classes I ever took.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, you live on the East Coast? Do you still live in New
Yeah.
York, or?
I live in Rochester, New York, where
Okay.
I'm from. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a whole different vibe on the West Coast than there is on the East Coast. It's just in terms of, it's like either if you're gonna get like move somewhere for the entertainment, it's
Right.
either New York or LA.
Right.
And it's like I miss some of that New York attitude, or just even bluntness, or just that there's a little bit of
A term that I hate, hustle.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
Yeah.
I hate that term, but it's like it is true, and it's like there is nothing like it. And
I'll be like standing at a place to get coffee here, and I'll be like, I've been waiting fucking 2 minutes. Like what? Like what? Like there's this like, and I worked in the service industry. Like I worked as a waiter and stuff like that. And
different vibe, man.
Yeah. I was like,
different vibe.
It just took you 10 minutes to even acknowledge my existence. Why?
We need more of that though as East Coasters. We need some of that. They need some of what we have too, but we need some of what they have. They need the balance.
You know what's very interesting though that I will say is that living on the West Coast, especially in the Washington area, is that it is really, really, really difficult to make friends. People are incredibly nice to you, but they will not let you into their inner circle. It takes time,
so interesting.
Yeah. And whereas I found like, I grew up around a lot of Italians and, just like all sorts of diversity, but, it was like people would kind of be mean to you, but then they would like buy you a beer. They do anything for you, at the same time, and it's just
it was fast initiation,
right?
It was like let me see if you can withstand,
right? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then if you can, I very quickly know that you are accepted in my circle.
Yeah.
Where I think that West Coast mentality you're referring to is a little more padded. Right. But the padding is thicker. It's harder to get.
Yeah. And I remember I was on like a subreddit or something like that, and I was talking about, the difference that I saw between like West Coast or people in Seattle, this area, versus growing up in New Jersey. And somebody was like, why does everybody complain that we don't want friends? I don't want any more friends. I like why is that a thing? And I was like, they're like, I don't need to be your friend. I have enough. And to me, that was like a totally like different mind shift, because when you grow up in that area, it's kind of like the more the merrier. Like everybody's like, you're fit. You know what I mean? Like you grew up in I grew up in a lot of like Italians in the area who are just like, when you're here, you're family. It doesn't matter. Right. You also, there's like a bluntness about that is not exactly, very
well. It's also
homey,
like
but
punk and hardcore community too, or like scene community is like the more the merrier. You want want the community to be as robust as possible, but it's like not everyone thinks of their relationships as fostering a community. They think of their relationships as like, these are mine. These are my special things. And I think, going to shows and stuff like that, it was like, or playing shows. My mentality is always like, yes, more people.
Right.
More people. More people makes it easier to pay the band. Yes, more.
I guess I wanted to ask. Well, there's one question I want to ask: is who is Dr. Howe?
Oh gosh, I almost forgot until you mentioned it, and I was like, do I remember this? I do. Dr. Howe was a therapist I called at the time. Oh, how fitting for you. Was a therapist I called at the time he was the first therapist I ever called. I was very young when I wrote that song and that lyric. And I was in need of therapy. And I called a therapist for the first time. I was scared to do it, didn't know what to expect, but knew I needed it. And he never called me back. And I just thought that was funny. I just thought as a kid, I was like, this is really funny. On my end, I am viewing this phone call as like this grand attempt come out of my shell and finally ask for the help I could never ask for before. But on his end, it's just a client he couldn't take on. And I just found that difference kind of funny.
Well, I think that one, it's a problem. Like it's, and as a therapist, I'll admit to that. Like calling people back, one is honestly, I don't like talking on the phone. Like I'm terrible like it's one of my things that I'm like I get
I
anxious
don't
about
either.
it.
Yeah.
And so I prefer that people like email me through my website when I can, or like text message. But it's good to hear that, because sometimes we get so lost in the business aspect of things, or
Yeah.
just like I've got a million other things going on, and these people are reaching out to me because they need help, right? And it's
Right.
like I can't it, the least I could do is like tell them I can't help them right now,
Right.
right?
Touch
Like,
base, yeah.
yeah,
But
and like,
I get it. I
well,
totally
when
get
I
it.
first when I first started out, I was like very intentional. I was like, I'm gonna call like every single person back, um and then it quickly became more like self-preservation,
Sure.
where I was like, I can't unfortunately have a 20-minute like conversation with you about,
Yeah.
like what's going on. But I had always wondered that, like, that just, the music that you guys wrote was, and in like a really, I clung on to, sometimes things just disappear, like very hard during a breakup with actually like my now wife. But
Is your wife's name Ashley?
no,
Or did you
it's
say actually?
actually,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. My wife's name is Ashley. That's why I said that.
Okay.
Oh, is your wife's name Ashley? Okay.
So that was really, that was super important to me. Actually, I have that on vinyl, and I have The Red of the Better on vinyl. Um, but I think you probably know, but like, to me, it's cool that to know that something you've created can touch people in a certain way, in ways that you probably don't even realize that it does. You
Yeah.
know,
And I
um,
still take that, like, that's a responsibility and a notion that I always really took seriously, and was, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the whole point. That
right,
is the whole point. And
right,
like, when you're like a professional musician, you spend so much of your time doing other stuff. And like, when you get face to face with that little thing, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna honor this. I
right.
still am very diligent about honoring that. I still get messages from people about that stuff, and I respond to every single one, because it's very meaningful to me. It's very like, yeah, that's why I did it,
Right.
was for this, for you to connect with this. I'm always amazed. Though, it still surprises me, like, to hear, for some reason. Like, I forget sometimes that we did it, and that it was there for people to connect with. And sometimes the ways people connect with it are not the ways that I planned, but
Right.
that's kind of the beauty of it too.
Right. I was thinking, what was the last thing just I so that I think like that song Convinced I'm Wrong. I mean, like, this I first, like, just because I always wondered who Dr. Howe was. That hits me in a way that makes me feel so sad. Like,
Yeah.
it really does. And listening to that song in general made me like I would have to skip it sometimes,
Sure.
because that part was like, what good am I to anybody like this? Like, I was going through that breakup, and I felt that, right? I was
Yeah, that was
like, it's
partly a
just,
breakup song too. Actually, a
yeah,
lot of those feelings were on the backs of a
yeah,
breakup situation at the time.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, for better or worse, whatever our strengths were as a band, or even my strength as a lyricist, I was always very, like, very concerned with getting it right.
yeah,
Getting being true and honest about the feeling. And I don't think I planned for all the ways that happens, but I'm happy to hear that it does happen. And funnily enough, that is one of our most popular songs.
mm,
And we as a band didn't really think of it that way. We
yeah,
a lot of times didn't play it live for many, many years. But if you look at like our Spotify plays, I think that's number one or number two is that song. And I think it's because of that. There is just a feeling in that song that um is palpable, hopefully so, at least.
Yeah. Last question. What movie of yours, or that you can think of, like, and I'll tell you mine, but what movie do you think has the most like beautiful cinematography?
Oh my gosh. That changes a lot for me. Because there's so much beautiful cinematography. And if you asked me this 5 years ago, the answer would be different. If you ask me 5 years from now, the answer will be different. But right now, I'm really drawn to like naturalistic cinematography, like very into Paris, Texas right now, and Bobby Mueller specifically as a cinematographer, but also like minimalist and architectural cinematography, like Michael Mann movies, or most recently like Ryosuke Hamagachi movies, Drive My Car and Asako 1 and 2, and just like nothing nothing too showy, nothing too flashy. I love a lot of that flashy cinematography, like obviously Roger Deakins and I mean, really love like Jack Cardiff, if you want to go way, way back, Powell and Pressburger movies, like the movies that he shot, just clearly really flashy, just awesome cinematography, and not flashy in a bad way, just like expressive, beautiful cinematography.
Yeah.
But now I'm into a little more minimalistic stuff right now, just angles and buildings. Nothing too prescribed and pre-built, but something that feels a little more happened upon.
Okay.
Something that's more like a reappropriation of a space that was always there, but you never quite saw it like that. And Paris, Texas is a good example of that for sure.
Yeah. I'm particularly drawn to, I mean, honestly, as soon as with my job, and the amount of emotional, like, sucking it takes out of me, like, watching movies is really hard.
I totally get that. Totally get that.
So
yeah.
like for me, it's like I always like lean back on, certain things. But during my grad school program, we had to watch The Outlaw Jesse James Killed by the Cat with Robert Fulton. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, yeah.
Love the cinematographer.
The assassin, the Brad Pitt version. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's Roger Deakins. Yeah, Roger
Okay.
Deakins, and like the cinematography in that is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, that's like a forgotten masterpiece. That movie has aged very, very well. I watched it recently-ish, within the last 2 years, and that's a good one. That's a keeper for sure.
So I got to
Other
get
movie
going before
after
my
that is
wife.
really good too, actually.
Which one is that?
Killing Them Softly. He did a gangster movie. The director's
Oh,
name I'm forgetting for some reason. The second I see it, I would know it. But Killing Them Softly also really good. I too have to go. I have to go relieve my wife as well.
yeah,
But what a
same
great
thing.
note to end on. Yeah.
I really appreciate it. It's been an honor for me
Yeah.
to be able to talk to you. I don't know when I'll get these episodes out. What I'm trying to do is cluster a few together, because people will say they'll do it and then they back out, and
Right.
then stuff like that. I'd be interested in that. If you want to Instagram message me or email me the movie Discord, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure.
And let me know if there's anything like you thought of and you were like, I really think maybe I don't want that in the episode.
Sure.
And I don't have like many listeners, so
All good.
it's not going to be like broadcast. But
I will add one thing quickly.
yeah.
Andrew Dominic is the name of the director of that film.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No.
I was like, all right, I have to look this up. Who the fuck? I can't. I know this person's name and love their films, but age is happening to me and I can't remember things. So yeah.
Ain't it a bitch, right?
Gosh. Yeah. Anyway,
the amount of alcohol that I can consume is no longer where it was, and all these different.
Oh yeah.
My knees hurt.
It's all bad.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your craft and what you do, and just what it's meant to me. It's been really awesome to be able to talk with you about this stuff. So
thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. Happy to come on.
Well, that about does it for this episode. If you like the podcast, please consider subscribing. You can find us on all major podcasting platforms and on Instagram @TheScenecast. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.